interview with J.K. Rowling, she was asked if there were intentional similarities between Voldemort and Hitler, and she said yes, there were, because she wanted to call attention to two of her biggest pet peeves, which are hatred and bigotry. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try, my attempt is to kind of just establish that relationship based on more than the negative Hitler myth, which is Hitler as this horrible guy, and propaganda and perceptions around readers. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off talking about Hitler and Voldemort when they were younger. As you can see, Hitler grew up in a household with both parents, but it wasn't in that sort of white picket fence that we might all imagine. Hitler's father was really abusive to him and his siblings, and so as a result, his mother sheltered him a lot. And so that caused him to miss out on a lot of social interactions that you might experience as a kid, going out, having fun, and learning different things. Because of that, he had a small group of friends, and they described him as kind of domineering, which was probably his plan to kind of have that sort of control over his friends and sort of prove himself to not only himself, but to his father. Also, as a child, Hitler was influenced by Karl May. And Karl May is a German author who wrote stories about the American Old West, but not in the way that we would read stories about the American Old West, where the cowboys come in and they triumph over the barbaric Indians. Karl May's stories were stories about how the Native Americans would triumph over the cowboys. And Hitler loved these stories because he often thought of himself as the underdog. And so he took those stories and was like, okay, well, this is great. Here's a story about underdogs defeating the oppressor, the American military. And so you would kind of see in his future life that these influences will shape his ideologies. On the other side, Voldemort grew up with no parents. His mother died about an hour after she gave birth to him, and his father just left him completely while his mother was pregnant. And so he had no friends living in the orphanage, and he was often described as being mean to the other kids, stealing their toys, harming their pets, doing things like that, up until he got into Hogwarts, School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where he took a very increasing interest, maybe even suspicious interest in the dark arts, probably as a way to gain control and power over his enemies. And so, obviously, as a child, your surroundings and your circumstances are going to affect the way you think and your ideologies when you start to grow up. And so these are just some of the main ideologies of both Hitler and Voldemort. Right here you can see this is a piece of Nazi propaganda that shows Hitler's view of the perfect race. They're fair skin, light hair, and if their eyes were colored, they'd probably be blue. And so to justify their beliefs in racial purity, Hitler's Aryan race and Voldemort's pureblood, Hitler used scientific racism, which is basically just using biology to validate your racist views, saying, okay, well, these people have dirty blood, which are, for Hitler, probably include Jews, gays, mentally disabled people, stuff like that. And for Voldemort, it was half-bloods, mudbloods. Also, social Darwinism came into play because it was kind of just the survival of the fittest. The Aryans, obviously, and the purebloods were the strongest of the races, and so they were going to out-survive everybody else. They also both called for loyalty to their cause. They don't want people who are going to be flaky and not carry out the tasks that they are assigned. They also had visions of a greater society and new order, and I'll talk about that later. This is kind of just a quote from Mein Kampf, Hitler's biography, where he basically says, this is why we need racial purity, or this is what happens when you mix races, the lowering of the races, and people begin to get sick, and that's why people die, because we've mixed races, and people will live longer if they don't mix the races. And it was apparently essentially that. This is a quote from J.K. Rowling, basically just saying Voldemort is power hungry and racist, which I thought was pretty interesting. So these are the main goals. not only to control the other European governments, but also eventually all governments, including the American governments, in order to secure his perfect race. He wanted to have the Aryan race and the SS and the Nazis ruling basically everything. And Voldemort obviously wanted purebloods, and that's it, even though he was a half-blood himself, which is pretty ironic for both of them because neither Hitler nor Voldemort were embodiments of their perfect race. The New Order that I mentioned earlier was pretty much just a society consisting of the perfect race and run by a select group of people, which for Hitler would have been the elite group of the SS, and for Voldemort would probably be his closest Death Eaters, the Inner Ring. And the other main goal that everyone knows about is the extermination of their enemies, which not only included the opposing governments and authorities, but also included, like I said, those with dirty blood, half-bloods, mudbloods, and pure-blood traitors. Ooh, that follower was just a guy taking a walk. Obviously, these guys were not just two guys taking a walk, or else there would be no point to this presentation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Death Eaters, who are Voldemort's followers. Their sign right there is a dark mark. It's usually on the left arm. It's a way to kind of tell them apart, and also acts as a summoning tool to get them to come to Voldemort. They're usually purebloods, and I say usually because there can be instances in which muggles or mudbloods, those without magical parents, can join. It's rare, but it's not impossible. They also pushed for racial supremacy, which I talked about, but it was kind of conditional to support of the cause because not all purebloods wanted to follow Voldemort. If you've ever read the books, or seen the movies, Sirius Black is a great example. He's a pureblood wizard who fights on the side of the light side, the Order of the Phoenix, the Ministry of Magic, all of Dumbledore's order. And then we have the Nazis. They are also very strongly loyal to their cause, and I say cause for this and not leader because even though Hitler did want them to be loyal to him, his ultimate goal was for the cause to be pushed forward, whereas Voldemort, he more wanted people to be loyal to him as well as to his cause. Like I said, they also wanted racial supremacy and the New Order to be pushed through as well.